Okay, already there is a presentation of the next speaker, and that is something very attractive, at least to me. So please, Dimitris.
When I saw that I'm concluding the two panels, I was a little bit afraid because appointing an economist from the European Union to speak at the end, it's a little bit dangerous because we are very, very good in ruining the visions of the visionaries.
You are talking about the State Planning Committee of the former Soviet Union, not about modern economy.
Well, before beginning my presentation, I would like to thank the Dialogue of Civilization Research Institute for its remarkable hospitality, and personally Mr. Yakunin for inviting us, having us here, and we are always supportive to every open-minded initiative, wherever it happens. And of course, I need to stress here that Mr. Yakunin enjoys the respect of many members of the European Parliament, and this is an indicative characteristic of the legacy of the gentleman. Well, the One Belt, One Road initiative is not a new artificial construction. It's very, very old, and I would like to start with a part of historical memory that share both you, Chinese, and we, Greeks, Byzantines, when in the 7th century, the Emperor of Constantinople, Justinianus, sent 2 missionaries from Constantinople to China to steal the secret of the Chinese. They returned back with their hollow sticks full of silkworms. They presented the worms to the emperor, and he said, "What is this? Is this the precious thing the Chinese cover?" "Yes, because this is a very significant weapon." They started have silken flannels for their cavalry, and this protected the defenders of the Byzantine Empire for more 800 years, because you know the silk covers you when the arrows beat you. Well, let's start. As very correct Mr. Jelinek said before, European Union did not sign the Memorandum of Understanding. But this is not surprising because always, always any international agreement is very, very difficult to be accomplished. And this is not necessarily a stalemate, but in the most of the cases, it is a gate because we at least know on what we disagree on. And thank you very much, Oleg, for pointing out the item of the significance of leadership in international trade agreements, because as TTIP and CETA indicates, we need to have it always in our mind, not only as the significance of the leadership of an initiative, but also the limits of the leadership in any initiative. European Union stated a set of principles that must be necessary in order to see every international agreement to go forward. The first and foremost is to avoid any short-termist and myopic interest of the participants, with the Europeans first. EU favors the partnership and its long-term terms, but we state 4 very important items. First, transparency, openness, and partnership building, standardization, transactional and institutional certainty, environmental responsibility, and social responsibility. And in any case, can we not say that this is an international agreement that can help us to remedy the pitfalls of capitalism? I think that a very big project, a global project of that scale, requires a new international economic cooperation model, and I suggest that the traditional top-down international arrangements are not compatible with the current multipolar global reality. Exactly the opposite is what we need: a less systemic and much more flexible, new, bottom-up international political paradigm. The bottom-up approach rebalances the responsibilities of speed, depth, and width of the new international economic arrangement by increasing the significance of the stakeholders. Why empowered stakeholders will guarantee the acceleration of the project? Because market agents are faster than government agents. Second, the interests of the market agents align and adopt faster than the perceptions of the governments. And third, which is, in my view, very, very important, market agents create regularities, routines, and communication patterns more efficiently. My proposal is to create an international Eurasian economic regime. I use the old concept of international political economy, international regime. If I may give some basic information about it, there are alternative international political economy theories about what incentivizes Europe, China, Russia, India to be engaged in international regime. There are three theories. Power-oriented theories. Agents create international economic regimes to maximize their global and regional power. Two, interest-oriented theories, where agents create international economic regimes to facilitate the advancement of their interests. Three, knowledge and identity-oriented theories, where agents create international economic regimes because they share common views and want to advance them. In practice, all the motives more or less coincide in international regime, and this is what makes international regime a strategic behavior. Well, international regime is very, very, very important tool. Very important tool because it is proven that it creates certainty, it creates routines and regularities, it creates confidence and trust, it creates mechanisms for international dispute settlement, and it creates narratives and storytelling that increase cohesion and a sense of common purpose. International economic regime development in the it's a framework that creates efficient creation of international value. And the main challenge is to model coordination in the context of a Eurasian economic space. How we build an international regime? Any international regime, I kindly remind you the Krasner's article of 1985, requires principles, norms, rules, and decision-making procedures. Principles are beliefs of facts, causation, and rectitude. Norms are standards of behavior defined in terms of rights and obligations. Rules are specific perceptions of action. And decision-making procedures are prevailing practices for making and implementing collective choice. To build a Eurasian economic regime, we need all those four elements to exist implicitly or explicitly, and the main players' expectations to converge around them in the given area of interest. What weakens a regime? When principles, norms, rules, and procedures become less coherent, or the practice is more and more inconsistent with the articulated principles, norms, rules, and procedures, then the regime weakens. Short-term behavior is not regime-oriented behavior. And changes in rules and procedures does not change a regime, whereas changes in principles and norms of the actors result to regime change. Practice. Toward a Eurasian economic regime, keep it robust and strong. Keep the coherence between principles, norms, rules, and procedures. Avoid often regime changes by amending principles and norms, and strengthen often the rules and the procedures. Your actions should be consistent with the principles, norms, rules, and procedures, and maintain a primarily long-term view while you act. First thing first. We cannot build at once a full-scale economic regime, especially in the Eurasian context, due to the diversity, which is economic, cultural, political, geographical. We can build, however, a limited or transparent Eurasian regime. This is a term I would like to introduce to our panel here, which focuses not on the big things, but on the operations and build trust and interoperability slowly. engage everybody and keep all the actors on the same page in tandem, and requires only to find an issue area of common interest to focus on it. We need something to start building around it. And now I will make you very happy because after consideration of different alternative assets, I focus on the infrastructure as part of this building capacity. OBOR is an infrastructure capital-intensive political economy arrangement. It will be materialized faster as we create the mechanism for cash flow generation. Many people have already committed their energy and capital betting on this initiative. Let them create value out of it. Let the entrepreneurs start building, value first, politics later. The sooner the stakeholders will generate some profit, the more engaging will be for them to continue. Infrastructure, as a financial asset class, is long-term and constant value-oriented. Contrary to other asset classes, it generates commitment. Infrastructure is perspective. As I said before, in order to build a limited international economic regime, we need 4 elements. Here, I focus on the most important of everything in our bottom-up approach. Rules and procedures first. I have 2 branches over here in order to consolidate what we need, institutional certainty for the developers of infrastructure projects. The first part is called harmonization. The other part is coordination. What is the difference between the two? Harmonization is when we all agree on the same rules. Rule 1, Rule 2, Rule 3, and we all together proceed to implement what is regulated. The coordination thing is we just state how we are going to approach an end, and we try to accomplish our task in our own way without following a certain rule path. So, in the harmonization place, we need, in any case, first and foremost, harmonization in the public and private partnerships formation. Not all the members of this initiative have equally developed or equally mature structures of PPPs. The second thing I suggest is the harmonization of special purpose vehicles and investment platforms, namely funds that contribute capital not only through the traditional channels of banking or public sector service, also fintech solutions, including crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending, and other innovative ways that can help us to generate fast and efficiently the capital we need to speed up the capacity building. The third thing is harmonization between the Eurasia capital institutions for blending of financial instruments. We have about 100 million different providers of capital, reconstruction banks, development banks, commercial banks, funds, other kinds of institutions. Okay, generation and concentration of capital is very, very important, but in this scale project, we also need efficient allocation of risk. And when you build a project of a capex of 100 millions, let's say, you need to make a puzzle of different planning opportunities. We need an institutional view about it. The fourth harmonization element is harmonization in financial reporting standards. Every single member state, even in the European Union, has its own financial reporting standards, and it's a mess. It's a mess because you cannot compare 2 equal businesses. How is it possible for me to say that your project proposal is better or more efficient or more feasible financially if I don't have a common understanding of the standards with you? Very important. The other side is about the coordination. Legal certainty is very, very important. And legal certainty can bring safety in dispute settlement procedures. We also need to have a common view on that. Of course, we cannot harmonize our legal systems, it's impossible, but we can have a common direction on where we go and how fast. The second thing is coordination in the management and maintenance of the infrastructure projects, for example, with compatible manuals. When you have a cross-border project, imagine how difficult it is to coordinate the maintenance, the safety, and all the infrastructure in a cross-border dimension. Impossible. We need common manuals. And the third thing is coordination in the management of data and digital content of smart infrastructures. I would like to remind that the project of linking the trade between India and European Union failed because of the ownership of data. Data is very important in infrastructure. Having spoken about the basics, we go to solid principles: transparency, social responsibility, institutional certainty, and environmental responsibility. The other thing is engaging norms. I have focused on three aspects. The first is additionality and upgradability on the infrastructure projects that become smart. The second is graduality, that gradually balances the requirement of equity versus fairness. And the third one is instructivity, that reassures sharp increase of human capital development and compatible education. I will elaborate on this. Additionality and upgradability. I have here two grids. The first one depicts a traditional infrastructure. You see that the infrastructure is linked to a service, for example, transportation, and the user receives or uses the infrastructure through the service provided. Also, the financial structure of this is comparatively easy. You build a special purpose vehicle, and you gather money from alternative resources and equity and capital and debt terms. The smart or upgraded infrastructure project is very important because it makes the allocation of capital even easier. Building a road or building a railway, it means nothing if it cannot be upgradable. We cannot build again and again the same infrastructure. It has to be upgradable. What makes upgradable an infrastructure is the digital layer between service and infrastructure that allows, on the one hand, smart or more efficient infrastructure management, and on the other hand, smart or new services provided because of this digital layer that help both the user and what we call Internet of Things. Imagine trains, transparent trains, made from graphenium, running on invisible rails with just a click from Rotterdam to China, 10 years from now. We already developed this technology and we regulate it right now in the European Union. Summary. OBOR can become a new model of international cooperation. EU welcomes it. Some convergence in principles, norms, rules, and procedures is necessary to proceed. A limited economic regime should become priority in order to set the framework for a fully developed economic regime that unifies Europe and Asia. A Eurasian framework for infrastructure project development can provide the basis for that. Advanced inclusive regional agreements than country-by-country agreements is much more useful and necessary to become. Prefer regional agreements and not country-by-country. Agree on the basic norms and principles first, and then negotiate procedures and rules. And finally, build mechanisms that incentivize regime behavior, cooperative behavior, and grant equity to everybody that contributes productivity. And let me end with that. As long as we are in Berlin, I think it's a moment of clarity, and this is what Beijing meeting showed us. Ludwig Wittgenstein in Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus said these words: Was sich sagen lässt, lässt sich klar sagen, und wovon man nicht sprechen kann, darüber muss man schweigen. What is to be said has to be said clearly. And if it's not to be said clearly, it's better not to be said at all. Allow me just to come back and conclude that this is the most expensive slide of my presentation, and this is also a tool to build a research project around all this institutional certainty, which is paramount and crucially important for seeing this fantastic global project be implemented. Thank you.